Hello everyone, you're very welcome. I hope you're enjoying the week and you're getting to see some of Dublin as well and that the weather hasn't been too bad. My name is Ethan Cleary and I'm going to talk a bit around data recording, ownership and governance concerns amongst Irish farmers. I'm in charge of product development for the Irish Farmers Association, involved with building external facing apps, websites and systems, and a core part of that is understanding the user experience needs of our members. I'm also involved in the technology policy side, looking at how we can create the environment for better ag tech adoption, what are the big success factors and what are the barriers. I'm also part of the Demeter project, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well, and what's been done there in order to help with the concerns that we're raising around ag data use. So the IFA, the Irish Farmers Association, is Ireland's largest farming representative organisation. We represent Irish farmers nationally and in Europe, lobbying and campaigning for better conditions and incomes for our farm family members. We also provide representation, support and advice to members on an individual basis. We are also part of the Demeter project, which is funded under Horizon 2020. It's focused on the digital transformation of the agri-food sector, but for the benefit of farmers, which is a key element of this. It involves a large-scale deployment of farmer-focused technologies delivered through a series of European pilots. There's a massive collaborative project involved with 60 partners, and it focuses on both sides of the value supply chain, different farm sizes, different farm types, production sectors, different farm systems. The key focus, the technology focus underpinning all of this is interoperability between all of the different technologies involved in managing farm business. The big issues with all of these systems and protocols, frameworks, etc., is that they need to be interoperable, but without adding any additional friction to how the farmer end user engages with them. So Demeter is aiming to demonstrate the value of this interoperable approach, and it'll focus on farm level situations and jobs to be done, but it'll also extend out into the farm advisory and extension layer. So from the research and in consultation with our members within the Irish Farmers Association, we have grouped together the big top level challenges that we see facing ag tech adoption and ag data use. So the lack of clarity and accessibility in terms of what is meant by ag data and how to access it leads to a lack of understanding. There's a fear of unintended consequences. So there's an understanding that ag data does have the potential to drive better farming outcomes for farmers, but there's also a fear that this data will be used against them, either in a kind of a punitive way, but also the risk of it getting into the wrong hands, let's say. Understanding what is agricultural data, because there's a blend of different elements involved. So there is personal identifiable information such as your address, which is used. Farming is very land driven, obviously, and that means that location is a core part of that. There's payments data, and then there's transactional data. So that's the production data, the data generated in how you are actually running and managing your farm on a day-to-day basis. There's also a concern of what is happening with the data originated on farms. Is there a way to track and see the data that I generated, where it goes, or is there a clear definition or some kind of terms and conditions around where my data is allowed to go? Who collects the data, why and for what purposes, and who is it shared with is another growing concern. And then who governs the use of ag data? What are the regulations around this? So it can be overwhelming for those of us working in the industry to keep track of the existing regulations and directives, never mind looking at what new instruments are coming down the line. Now imagine what it's like for a farmer trying to keep track of all of this stuff. How does this play out in terms of in the real world? What does this mean when you're signing a contract? How does this protect me as a farm business? Where is my data going? Is there anything here that will help me understand this? So in terms of the actual data types that we have grouped together at a very high level, and in consultation with our members, we can see that there's essentially 6 categories here. Livestock data, which pertains to all data relating to the livestock individually and as a herd, including health and welfare information, genomic information. Land data, that's all the topological data, geographical data as well, so your soil structure, conditions, etc. Farm management data, so this is all data relating to how you are operating your farm business. So the likes of input price tracking, the like of transport, stock control, and other farm management data. Agronomic data, this is anything to do with crop and field information, such as planting and seeding rates, crop yields and outputs, crop treatment applications, etc. Machine data, so this is looking at the data that's used on the machine and how is that data, who owns that data, how is that managed, how is that tracked. And then climate and weather data, which is pretty self-evident as well. So what do our farmers think about all of this? So as part of the Demeter, we carried out a farmer's voice survey where I think close to 500 participants were involved, and we can see within Ireland that there's a very high rate of adoption in comparison to other member states, but there's also now a growing concern around the misuse of agricultural data and then data value asymmetries within smart farming technologies. So how do we address these different challenges? So remember, these are the kind of the top 6 ag data challenges that we have derived from consultation with our members. So if we look at the likes of, we believe that most of these can be tackled using a blend of technology, policy, and better communication in general. So if we take these 3 particular elements, the lack of clarity and accessibility, in terms of understanding what's happening with their data, what's happening with the data originated on a farm, and who collects it, why, and how is it shared and managed, and for what purposes. So within Demeter, it provides this new layer of interoperability or common language. And again, key here is common language. You think about the different terms that we use today, such as data interchange, data integration, aggregation, migration. We get confused ourselves around the clear definition around each of these processes. So what a platform like Demeter does, the technology will get out of the way, and it means it'll be easier for farmer end users to understand and visualize what is happening with their data, but also they will have complete control and choice on what data they want to include and use within Demeter and who they want to share it with in terms of the other partners involved on the platform. So if we look at maybe the fear of unintended consequences with ag data, again, how can we bake trust and assurances into relationships between farmers and other actors in the supply chain, whether that be government agencies, industry research organizations, startups, etc. There's multiple different approaches out there in use across the globe. So from the concept of data cooperatives and data brokerages, where there's an intermediary that manages the transactions with the data, there's code of conducts and accreditation and different standardizations as well, to help kind of bring a common base to what's going on. So we have looked at and investigated the Ag Data Charter approach, which has an existing precedent within Irish agriculture. And essentially what we're doing is building this around what we call the TAC model, which is transparency, accountability, and consistency. Across all of the different arrangements, agreements, and interactions that a farmer will have with the different bodies involved in Irish agriculture. And this is all underpinned by clear, direct, upfront communication. And essentially the Charter is a written instrument that will give a grant or a guarantee of rights or privileges in relation to the agricultural data. So the goal is to set the rules and governance models beyond legislation, because the legislation doesn't currently exist around certain elements of transactional data, or ag data in this situation. And how can we encourage best practice in farm data management? Now there's different kind of codes of conduct in place out there. We're looking for something a little bit more rigorous maybe in terms of getting people to sign up to, in a collaborative way, an agreement based around rights or principles relating to ag data. So, we're looking at the likes of government agencies, organizations and businesses involved in the ag industry, research organizations, tech companies, and farm organizations like ourselves. And then this is, there's a lot to take in here. We've come up with an initial preliminary set of 15 rights or principles here. But if we focus in on some of them here, until someone can clearly explain the benefits, we are finding that people are recalcitrant or reluctant to share their data. So how can we bake in the idea of clearly explaining benefits within something that is quite dry and technical, like an end user license agreement or a contract? So bringing this level up to an actual overarching document that gives that trust explicitly to farmers that are involved in any of these relationships in terms of sharing data with the bodies involved. We're also looking at how we can use the different technologies out there to enable this to be done in an easier, quicker way. So the likes of Demeter, which has its built-in consent models there as well, is a perfect solution to help something that can be quite technical, legal, and kind of written to be implemented and manifested in a way that actually makes sense and it's quite an easier approach to do all of this stuff as well. So there is hope with all of this stuff. We believe that we're working towards, from both sides, the technology side and maybe the kind of the software policy side of things, that we'll be able to actually build in that trust again and get people understanding about what the use of ag data is, the value of it, and how this can all be used to actually drive the industry forward as a whole. So again, thanks very much for listening. If you have any additional questions or queries, you can contact me at my email address there, and check out our research around all of this as well at the URL provided. So thanks again, and hope you enjoy the rest of the week.